Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Earlier, we were discussing the NFC Championship game, and now we're going to be diving into Michigan's new head coach, Sherrone Moore, I believe is how
Sherrone
you
Moore,
pronounce it.
yeah, that is
Um,
it.
Sherrone Moore on Friday was named the next head football coach at Michigan, which is the program's 21st and actually first black coach ever for Michigan. Um, the
I
new,
didn't realize that until you said that just now, and I'm
yeah,
like, you're right. Yeah, it
yeah.
is.
The new Wolverines head coach has already reacted to the announcement via social media. He posted on X, "So blessed to be a part of this great university, excited to continue to what we have built." Moore served as a co-offensive coordinator slash offensive line coach for the Wolverines during the national championship season in 2023. And he also did fill in for Jim Harbaugh as Michigan's acting head coach for 4 games and actually went 4-0 when he
All
was
right, went 4
filling
0.
in.
Yep.
Yeah, 4-0. Yeah.
Yes. I never quite heard it called 4-0, so I was like 4-0.
4
I
0.
got you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How do you feel,
Okay.
Tate?
Okay. It was the right decision.
Yeah.
I felt like any other decision other than this would have set Michigan back years.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a team that was just coming off the national championship, but you had a team that had already going to have 14 to 18 players that are going to get drafted. So you're
Yeah.
losing your star quarterback. You're losing a lot of players to the NFL draft. So that's making up NFL bodies is a very hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you had a very solid team still in Michigan. And one of the things that I was most worried about, and first of Sherrone is the perfect guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had, as the head coach, as filling in as the head coach, had a great game against went in with Maryland, then turned around and beat Penn State and then Ohio State. He has already proven that not only can he do the job, he has done the job and has done it well against top flight Big Ten competition. So when he was filling in when Harbaugh was suspended, that was the first start to that interview. Second of all, when you have a bunch of players that you are worried about keeping,
Mm-hmm.
having a coach that actually coached games during the season and show I have faith in this guy. I know what this guy can do.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest reason why I thought this was the right decision, players already knew who he was. They liked them. They were okay with playing with them. Uh, and players, Michigan was in a different situation. 3 years in a row, Harbaugh almost went to Minnesota, always went to another, I think Chicago last year, and then finally went to the LA Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the players were already expecting it. But when a coach leaves a college football team, one of the things that happens is immediately every player on the Michigan Wolverines team is open to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
That means every team in the country can go after and try to steal their players,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't go after anyone else's player because the transfer portal was closed. But it opens up for kids who have gone to school but their head coaches left.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at some of the things that some of the players are saying, they were already expecting Harbaugh to leave because he had been flirting with it for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Sherrone Moore stayed made it so that, hey, I'm not going anywhere. And for so far from everything I am hearing, player after player after player has said no, they're not going anywhere. They're staying in Michigan. So by bringing in Sherrone, a lot of the players are not diving into the transfer portal. They're staying there. No one is gonna No, there's not a lot of loss. The only thing by Harbaugh leaving that has kind of affected Michigan is recruiting the players coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, January is when you have a lot of the young players coming in. You're hosting players. The first 3 to 4 weeks of January and all the way to the first week of February. That's when you start hosting a lot of the recruits.
Mm-hmm.
Sherrone will miss out on most of this. Sherrone will only get like 2 weeks where everyone else is 5, 6 weeks of hosting young players. So the recruiting class could suffer a little bit there because that is so important, bringing in the young blood and coming in to fill in those gaps. And it makes it so that maybe they don't have those same opportunities. The only other time that they'll have after the spring game, spring game is when it's kind of like a preseason game where they inter squad scrimmage where they play against each other, and that kind of determines where players going to be starting or not starting. There'll be some other players that they can get. The transfer portal opens up right after the spring game, and
Mm-hmm.
Michigan may be able to fill in some of the gaps for the players that they lost and some of the recruits that they did not get.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that people know Sherrone Moore, unfortunately, it's kind of funny. His big moment in fame was winning the game and then crying on TV about how much they love Coach Harbaugh. So that was played everywhere. But people, because of that, though, people know
Mm-hmm.
who he is. They
Mm-hmm.
know how passionate he is about Michigan. And so I think it really will help him. Michigan has a tough road, though. Touching on the competition coming in for this year, the Big Ten is a very different league. The Big
Mm-hmm.
Ten, they're adding the Pac-12 teams, which consists of USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Washington has been decimated because their coach left, transfer portal, and they lost a ton of players. Washington, I don't look at them as a factor as far as winning the Big Ten. UCLA, they're going to be a mid-tier team. But USC is going to be incredibly strong. Oregon could win the Big Ten this year. Oregon is absolutely loaded. And then Ohio State has gone for broke. Ohio State has put a lot of money into the transfer portal. I think it's estimated as much as $16 million into the transfer
Ooh.
portal, bringing in a lot of transfer kids. Ohio State is going all in on this year, 2024 to 2025 season, to be the year. Not only do they win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, and win the national championship. Because if you're at Ohio State, the number one goal, first goal, you have to beat Michigan. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't beat Michigan, you can't lose 3 years in a row as the coach of Ohio State. You've already lost 3 years in a row. Harbaugh is gone. If Ohio State loses to Michigan this coming year, heads will roll.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that, and they've gone in. They've gone all in. Oregon, i.e., when you look at the Big Ten, though, honestly, it's Oregon and Ohio State. I have Penn State and Michigan right behind that with USC. That is going to be one hell of a tough season for Michigan. I'm very curious to see how it goes. And I know I got really long-winded on this one.
No, you're good because when it comes to college football, I'm all about those dogs, and that is it.
And honestly,
So,
if you're talking like a little side note, when I start thinking about who are the best teams in football, um, Georgia's right there. Georgia,
mm-hmm.
everyone has Georgia as the number one team in the country this year. I do not. I have Georgia number three. I got Ohio State one, Oregon two, Georgia, Texas, 3-4. Those are the 4 best teams in college football that I see. Way too early to be making predictions on this
Yeah.
because there's a lot more transfer to go.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's stacked.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's gonna be interesting. The nice thing about Sherrone Moore and all these changes, this is a new day in college football. It's no longer, hey, only the top 4 teams go. Starting this year, it's the top 12 teams. 12 teams make it. So, like last year, you look at Georgia losing to Alabama. Georgia would have had a shot at the national championship. I love that reaction you gave there. Georgia would have been still playing in the playoffs. Ohio State would have been playing. Oregon would have been playing. This is a new day, and I'm very curious if Sherrone can really keep Michigan together, bring in the recruits, and still make the playoffs. Because even though Harbaugh is gone, Michigan is only thinking about beat Ohio State, make the playoffs, and make a run. But if Sherrone goes in there and he loses to Ohio State, loses to Michigan State, missed the playoffs, there's going to be some upset people. This can be a thankless job. Being a coach is a thankless job. So that's all I had to say on that one.
I am curious to see how many players will now stay because Moore is the head coach instead of going into the transfer portal. But guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into our oddities of the day. So excited.